McLaren's flexible rear wing has been in the spotlight ever since Baku, and it has come to a point where the governing body has had to intervene with a statement regarding the legality of the MCL 38. In current regulations, every team is trying to push the boundaries as to what is legal or not, trying to exploit loopholes and take the interpretations to the absolute extremes. But will this be prohibited by the FIA? And if not, will the other teams follow suit, just like they're going to do with the flexibility of McLaren and Mercedes front wings? There is no question about it. McLaren's rear wing has brought a lot of attention ever since Baku. And the fact that Piastri was able to defend for so long on the 2-kilometre delta, even with Leclerc having a very competitive car, and the constant help of the combination of slipstream and DRS, made some of the teams very concerned when it comes to the legality of McLaren's car. This isn't the first time that a question of whether the MCL 38 is in the spirit of the regulations has come across the grid. And the FIA admitted that the data they've gathered for Baku will be used to further evaluate whether the Woking-based squad have done something illegal in the past couple of races. In an official statement after all of the buzz that was created regarding the DRS flap of the MCL 38, the FIA wrote, "The FIA is closely monitoring the flexibility of bodywork on all cars and reserves the right to request teams to make modifications at any point during the season. However, if a team successfully passes all deflection tests and adheres to the regulations and technical directives, they are deemed to be in full compliance and no further action will be taken." The FIA is currently reviewing data and any additional evidence that has emerged from the Baku GP and is considering any mitigating measures for future implementation. This is part of the standard process when scrutinising technical legality, and the FIA retains the authority to introduce regulatory changes during the season if required. As of now, the legality of the front wings has been proclaimed, and there will be no changes to the flexibility of the front wings for the remainder of 2024, which forced teams like Ferrari and Red Bull to bring more flexible front wings in their next batch of upgrades, which will come to Austin. But when it comes to this controversial design of the rear wing of the MCL 38, many teams believe that just because there is something illegal, it doesn't automatically mean that it's in the spirit of the regulations. This is also stated by a technical directive in the rules, which states, "Designs whose structural characteristics are altered by secondary perimeters so as to produce, whilst running at the track, a different deflection characteristic than when stationary during the FIA checks are not legal." Examples of secondary perimeters could be temperature, aerodynamic load, etc. Now, if we're to look at these two inserts, we would notice that both of the rear wings of the MCL 38 and the SF24 flex and rotate under aerodynamic load, which is a normal thing to do, because if it doesn't flex to a certain level, the rigidity would cause it to shatter to a million pieces. However, we must also remember that there is a regulation that narrates the amount of flexing that is allowed from this batch of technical regulations, and we must take you back to 2021 when Hamilton was disqualified from the Brazilian GP just because his DRS flap opened up 0.2 millimeters more than the allowed limit. On top of that, the data is clearly indicating that the difference in the top speed that the MCL 38 has with and without an open DRS is the smaller one from the top teams, which indicates that the rear DRS flap opening up a little bit more than usual helps them additionally with shedding drag and aiding the car when being hunted down from the DRS possessing challenger behind it. All of this goes to show that just because the rear wing has been deemed legal, it doesn't mean it will remain as such. And a clear picture in Singapore has been revealed as McLaren is now hiding the details of this element, worrying that the rest of the grid will follow with similar innovative solutions. The official announcement is that the cover of this part of the car was because of a new livery that would take place later in the day. But nevertheless, the fact that it came in such a controversial time where the legality of it is being discussed widely speaks volumes about how much the teams are fighting to find performance out of their cars in such a strictly regulated era. An anonymous team boss spoke exclusively to motorsport.com and revealed that this is definitely a matter that should be discussed to a greater extent in the foreseeable future, as just because it's legal now doesn't mean it's in the spirit of the regulations. As this anonymous man said, aeroelasticity has been a factor for many years now, and even if a wing passes the FIA test, the regulations remain very clear. The component cannot be designed to flex. We rely on the FIA to say, okay, what are the boundaries of that? Of course, everything will flex to a certain degree, but what is acceptable and what is not? We are starting to see extremities be exploited again, and I think it's down to the FIA to decide, is that okay? In which case, everybody will pile in, or as per the regulation, the way it's written, does that comply? There is a large scatter of who's doing what now, obviously with a lot of interest in the McLaren rear wing after Baku, and there is performance in it. Of course there is. That is why everyone is chasing it. But it is just knowing what is reasonable and what is taking the piss. As I mentioned earlier in this video, the front wing of the McLaren car has also been under a lot of scrutiny from team principals like Fred Vasseur and Christian Horner. However, the FIA's statement has been loud and clear. As of now, everything seems to be legal and there is nothing more we can do for the remainder of the season. This matter will also be looked at in 2025, and if some changes are to come the following season, then they will know for certain that the Woking-based squad as well as Mercedes have either cleverly or illegally managed to gain more performance over the rest of the grid. The guilt, however, is not to be found in these teams, but rather in the FIA, who is there to regulate the entire situation and to see whether or not certain changes can be made in order for everything to be kept in the spirit of the regulations. When talking about following suit with McLaren's flexible front wing, Christian Horner was adamant that his team will follow suit from Austin onwards, as Singapore will be a damage limitation race for the Austrian team similar to Baku, further stating, I think what is crucial for any team, as with all these things, is always clarity. Is something acceptable or is it not? If it's deemed to be acceptable, then obviously that encourages you to pursue similar solutions yourself. So the regulator obviously all have the information available. They have all the analysis that they've recently put cameras on many cars. They are collecting that data. But yeah, it's one of those things, as I say, that if it's deemed to be acceptable, then you pursue that route. The bad news does not end here for Red Bull. McLaren seem to have more upgrades in the chamber, and the fact that they have a lot more time to spend in the wind tunnel, which is far more sophisticated than the one in Milton Keynes, goes to show that the efficiency of these runs is going to make the car even more competitive. Andreas Stella, the team principal of McLaren, didn't want to point out whether or not the upgrades will come at the upcoming GP in Singapore, and when talking about the upcoming period for his team as well as the trajectory that it will follow, Stella said, "We are definitely working on upgrades for this season. We are now finalising this. I don't want to disclose too much in terms of what and when, but we do have a plan to make the car faster. Whether or not we'll be able to do it or not, we will see, because I think we have seen that at this level of development, it is not an easy task to actually change the specification of the car and get it to work as you expect in your development tools. But that's also why we took a bit more time to try and make sure that what we bring trackside is successful." Yes, I can confirm that we have some stuff coming for the next races. We will see if it comes in Singapore or not. I will let the surprise be in the FIA document when they are published. With all this in mind, do you think the FIA will take a more rigorous approach? And even more importantly, if it doesn't, do you think that the rest of the grid will be able to follow the genius innovation of McLaren successfully? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.